Okay, well, Hong Kong, Macau and Singapore, and also a little bit in Manila. So mostly in Hong Kong and Macau. In Hong Kong for about 4 years, and in Macau for about 3 years as well. The others are just normally I go for short times, you know, for example a month at a time or a few weeks at a time. Okay, well first of all I used to work in London, I used to work in television news, and I spent about 12 years doing that, and I got to a stage when I thought I was at a crossroads. I either carried on doing what I was doing or I tried to do something different, and I'd always been interested in working for myself. And one of the things about Hong Kong obviously is it's got a British connection, it's got that connection, and not only that, but I also had friends that were living here as well. But at the same time, of course, since the handover, you can't just turn up and expect to get a work visa or to get a job. So it's a more complex process than it used to be. But essentially, one of the attractions of being in Asia is that you don't have the same levels of barrier to becoming self-employed that you do in Europe. For example, in the United Kingdom is considered within the European Union to be one of the better countries for job creation and for self-employment. And yet, compared to Hong Kong or compared to Macau, it's much more difficult. The tax burden is higher, the regulatory burden is higher, there are all kinds of contributions that you need to make, and then if you want to hire anyone else, it becomes very expensive. It also becomes expensive or difficult to lose someone or to get to let someone go if for any reason you need to resize your business. So for all kinds of reasons, it was interesting to me to be in Asia. Having said that, I also understand that there is sometimes some resentment in maybe in Hong Kong and in Macau that foreigners, you know, they're having trouble elsewhere, so they come to our place and they try and do business there, and they want to, you know, as it were, take our opportunities. But the sort of things that I do are quite specific, and the skill sets that I have. I mean, I've been a working journalist for the best part of 30 years, so I have. But since then, I've also done other things. I've also done contract publishing. I've done multimedia. I've done website development. So I have skills that are not widely common. I mean, they're quite common in Hong Kong, but they're certainly not very common in Macau. So for those reasons, I'm not effectively taking jobs from other people, in fact helping to create jobs for local people. Because one of the things in Macau is that normally the rules are change over time, but roughly speaking, you're supposed to have 2 to 3 locals for every 1 person employed as a foreigner. So if you can create jobs for other people, you're actually creating a net benefit for society, really. So those were some of the motivations for me for being in Asia. I mean, essentially the most obvious ones are the permissions and the permits, etc., etc. As I say, because it's post-handover, post-97 here in Hong Kong, post-1999 in Macau, so one needs to go through more of a process to get permission to work. So yeah, so basically what I was saying is that you need to, the biggest barrier to working in this part of the world are those visas and permissions, etc., etc. But if you follow the right process, if you make the case that you have, you're going to offer more than you take away, you're not going to take anything away from the system. Because in Macau, for example, one isn't entitled, unless one is a permanent resident, you know, one isn't entitled to the handouts that the government give, you know, one's not entitled to, you know, healthcare, etc., etc. So it's not that you're taking away from the system, actually we're contributing to the system by being there. Okay, well, I mean, everyone knows the phrase taxi Cantonese. You know, people who've been in Hong Kong or Macau for 15, 20 years and all they can say is chakoi chakoi and lido. I fall into that category. I have to be honest with you. But one of the reasons I fall into that category is not purely laziness on my part, but because every day I'm asked to use English language skills. Those are the skills that I'm being asked for. It's not any kind of passing proficiency with Cantonese or Mandarin. So I don't frankly have the economic incentive to develop those skills. Having said that, of course, the more time passes since the handover, both of Macau and Hong Kong, the harder it is for any foreigner to justify not speaking the local language or languages. I'll give you an example. Imagine that someone was working a Chinese person was working in London and they didn't speak any English. People would complain pretty quickly. I mean, they might be able to get a job in a Chinese restaurant, but other than that, they wouldn't be able to find any work. So, I understand that these are barriers and these are things that people need to address if they're foreigners. And it's one of those things that, as it were, I honour it more in the wish than in the actual fulfillment. In other words, I keep saying, I must learn more Cantonese, I must learn more Mandarin, but frankly I haven't. So I understand that these can be, looking to the future, these can be barriers to me being in Asia for a long period of time.